Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2011 3D disaster survival film titled Sanctum. Now, Sanctum runs for 1 hour and 49 minutes long. It is directed by Alister Grierson. It is produced by Andrew White. The script was written by Andrew White and John Garvin. The score was done by David Hirschfelder. The cinematography by Jules O'Loughlin. And the editing was done by Mark Warner. And the stars of the movie it's a pretty small list of cast members, but I think there is good reason why this cast is small. Alright, the stars of the movie are Richard Roxburgh, Rhys Wakefield, Ioan Gruffud, Alice Parkinson, and Dan Wyllie. Oh god. I'm gonna tell you that even though James Cameron does not direct this movie, his handprints are truly over it. Truly all over it. He serves as the executive producer, but I think that maybe his hand at direction could have made this movie all the more better. Sanctum is a fearful adventure tale executed in a very convoluted fashion. There are some levels of intensity and excitement, and the ending has some heftiness to it. But all of it is plagued by the misused effects of the 3D. The film is just being stapled as a James Cameron production, but since Cameron doesn't have a lot of creative control, we know that fewer flaws would have occurred if Cameron was in the director's chair and the 3D would have truly been put to better use. If not the performances, at least the 3D could have been handled with better care. But since it wasn't directed by James Cameron, Alister Grierson tries to be like James Cameron, but he fails quite miserably. Based off of actual events, a group of explorers embark on a journey to the Esa Ala caverns of Papua New Guinea, in which claims to be the largest cave system on the planet and one of the least explored terrains that humans are still yet to uncover. It's practically maybe one of the last wonders on Earth that the human race has never fully explored. We've explored practically everything around this world, except this. So their purpose is to go through the caverns into seeing if there's a way out, to explore underneath, go through the caverns to find another route to lead to their way out. Their mission is to rediscover the once seen route and to reach a base camp beneath the lower depths for the purpose of how surface water could drain into caverns, finding its way into the sea. There's really no necessity in exploring these caves, but the team leader Frank, played by Richard Roxburgh, explains to his son Josh, played by Rhys Wakefield, that the cave is the key to living and that anything that is not submerged is meaningless, and that human eyes contact have never been open to a world like this one. In other words, this is probably his father's swan song to life. No one has ever explored these caves before. To him, this is his church. This is something that he's always had eyes on, and that nothing else really matters much to him. This mission, to him, holds the key to the meaning of life in his own personal perspective. Even though Josh probably just thinks this guy's talking bullshit. Which he is, but who am I to argue? After the first few minutes of utter nonsense, the team goes right into the cave system, and that trouble is only an eyelash away. And they go through all kinds of troubles. Of course, it's all just a matter of survival. I mean, one minute we're exploring the deep, dark caverns to find a way out. And because of all kinds of casualties within the characters risking their lives, it now becomes a battle of survival. As time and time goes on, crew member after crew member dies. It doesn't matter whether you're doing undersea exhibition, whether you're doing the high tech engineering stuff. Characters just keep dying and dying as the film progresses. And now it's basically just a matter of survival and who is the last person to go through this whole ordeal. Is it worth it? Not really. But it's a mission. And now Frank has gotten him and his group all into this mess. And now he has to find a way to get through the cave system. And they need to find a way to get out. Is it going to be easy? Hell no. But Frank is more determined about his own mission than for the safety of his other members, his crew. And this is kind of one of the main reasons why I didn't like the movie, is because a lot of the characters are so pretty much unlikable. I couldn't really care less if any of these characters died or not. And I'm not trying to be an insensitive jerk, but if you want a movie to work, you have to give me reasons why I should care about these characters. Personally, I knew very little about them, and I couldn't really care less. When it comes to overwhelming film continuity, Sanctum takes the cake. Never once does the film pinpoint the locality of the cave, let alone a clear picture of what the cave space looks like. At least in James Cameron's Titanic, the animated features give us a better indicator of how the mighty ship sank. At least we knew the events that led during the scary final hours. Here we see an animated sequence of partial areas of the cave, but everything is only seen briefly, and it never gives us any time to indulge in the bigger picture leaving us with empty knowledge of the cavern itself. Disaster movie. More like a headache movie. I mean, we see a lot of scenes where there's a lot of darkness and a lot of emptiness, but very little action, very little dialogue, and very little visuals. Now, because this movie was actually based on true events, Sanctum didn't need to be shot in 3D. The spaces were extremely claustrophobic. The lighting was quite low, and the atmosphere looked dimmer than it should have been. The only lighting we get are from battery dependent headlamps, and the characters seem to be in a world of darkness, so why wear the glasses? Why should we wear the 3D glasses? It was pointless. The illusion of depth is the primary purpose when you use 3D. And for that to be done, we must prevent the fourth wall like we're touching it. Like in Jaws 3D, when the shark was on the prowl, the body just touches the screen, and the 3D effect was just pure, null, and void. Although the eel attack was quite creepy. But, you see, I don't think Grierson really learned anything from James Cameron's Avatar. Because a lot of the 3D is very choppy, very claustrophobic, really too in your face for us to wonder what the hell is going on. So, cinematographer Jules O'Loughlin's 3D effects seems to touch the screen continuously. The framing consists of indistinct blocks of stones and such. And then I ask myself, why are the closer objects less distinct? Sure, there are plenty of close-ups, but they wear out their welcome pretty fast when shown in 3D. It's like a video game where sometimes when you have a game that deals with being submerged underwater and you control your characters going down some underwater cave and you constantly touch the screen, that's the feeling you get. It doesn't have to be that way. We're not here to go into some virtual video game. We're here to watch a movie. And that's the feeling I get. I get that feeling a lot in this movie. It's just very, very poorly executed. In the editing, we get very little in terms of how the actions of one character coincides with the other. There's a part where one of the characters gets in trouble underwater, and we get nothing to explain what happened and why the other, then to distract us and to confuse us. 3 team members follow what's happening by computer monitor. And all we get are their reactions and nothing more. But where do they get their information from? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the characters in just a bit. But yeah, The characters in this movie are very, very poorly executed. And they're only just, just there for the moment and nothing more. It's very ham fisted, the editing. And I also think that the script was also, very half assed in its depiction of the characters. And like I said, I'm going to further elaborate on that in just a bit. The closing sequences determines in ruthless fashion of who survives in this journey and who's left to die, which includes Frank and Josh, which is long, but it's effective in detail, but not necessarily for the sake of 3D. I hope when people see Sanctum, they don't assume it's a James Cameron 3D dependable film, because it sure fucking isn't. In fact, Sanctum might deter the reputation of James Cameron and 3D itself. Yes, Cameron does have a little bit of pull, but he doesn't have full, complete creative control. He's just an executive producer here. So he can't play extreme blame game on Mr. Cameron. I know I'm not the Eric Ryder who's trying to sue James Cameron for Avatar. That's a completely different person. I get that a lot. Anyhow. Like I said, Cameron is not entirely at fault here. The incompetence rests on the direction, the script, the cinematography, and the editing. But I haven't really delved too much into the performers or the performances. This is not a character-driven film by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't have to entirely be that way. But I would have probably garnered some sympathy for the characters had they not been so vapid, shallow, and totally unsympathetic. And I will get to pretty much the main characters per se as to why this film is a big barrel of suck. Richard Roxburgh plays the team leader named Frank. Now, in the past, I have always admired the performances that Richard Roxburgh brings to the screen. He always brings something new to the table. He brings always something fresh, something original, and he always seems to play his roles and his characters with the greatest of enthusiasm. Here, most of his dialogue consists of melodrama, and he also seems to growl a lot in his dialogue. Sort of almost like Christian Bale from The Dark Knight, with his robotic voice, like the way that I am speaking right now. That's the way he was talking, only with an Australian accent. Well, of course, that's of course because, he's from Australia. I mean, this is not anything that you should consider to be one of his more memorable films, or if it is one of his more memorable films, it is because it was not one of his better films. He could do a lot better. He is quite adept at putting on accents, and he does it so convincingly. Here, he just does not stand out. But he's not the only one. Rhys Wakefield. Oh my god, this guy seems to be playing like one of the biggest, most absurd cliches in film history. Once again, he's the poor little rich spoiled boy who's angry and pissed off because daddy was never always there for him. He's got a real love hate relationship with his father, which seems to be a common trend in Hollywood. Daddy was not there for him on his first birthday. Daddy was not there for him when he graduated from high school because he was swimming through caves and exploring deeper terrains within the Earth's atmosphere. And now, and now, Rhys Wakefield, who's Josh, and now Josh is like going on this exhibition because this is his way to bond with him and his dear old dad. And that is all we get from him. He's got this sad Crimea River living in a soap opera world where he's pouting because daddy's not there for him. And we have this love hate relationship that would probably work better in a human drama film than in an aquatic disaster film for survival. Do we need that? Does this have to be always in our faces? Fucking no. Ioan Gruffud plays the role of Carl, Frank and Josh's friend, business partner, multimillionaire. He's like the coordinator behind this whole exhibition. Um, Here, he's a Welsh-born actor, by the way, and in this movie he's actually playing an American, and we could clearly tell that at times he has his on again, off again switch from American accent to his typical Welsh accent. And his role as Carl, he kind of like tags along because he is the guy who is providing the money behind this whole exhibition. And eventually he turns out to go from being like buddy buddies with Frank and Josh and the rest of the crew, and then all of a sudden the last 20 minutes into this movie he becomes a deranged lunatic and ends up becoming the antagonist in one of the more thankless roles I have ever seen. That's another typical Hollywood cliche for you. The old 1 minute you're like the best friend in the world, and then all of a sudden you become a traitor. It's been done millions of times before. Yes, the non-trustworthy jerk. And then you got Dan Wyllie, who plays the role of Crazy George. He's their techie guy. He's like the liberal, hip, techie dude. He gets sort of killed in the early reaches of the movie. We need some comic relief because he's the one who picks up the most one-liners here in the movie. But I didn't really find his one-liners really that funny, and when he died off, just like a lot of the other characters, I couldn't really give a flying fuck. But I think the worst performer in this movie, and I really truly mean the fucking worst performance in this movie, definitely has to go to Alice Parkinson, who I believe her character's name is Victoria. Oh man, could you have not picked an even more terrible actress than this sad excuse of a performer? I hardly really know much about her, but after seeing this movie, I probably would like to know less about her. She was the absolute worst in this movie. I know, I don't want to sound sexist and all, But why was she even putting herself in danger when she's got absolutely no experience in scuba diving and cavern explorations? She doesn't have the training, she doesn't have the experience, and she also does some of the most stupidest things in this entire movie. Sure, it was pretty dangerous and dumb to go on this pointless mission, but if you're going to go on this mission, at least have some training, have some experience, have some common sense, which she seems to lack throughout. And she also seems to come across as being pretty unlikable, too. And, of course, I'm going to explain to you why. First of all, when one of the explorers, her name was Jules, played by, I think her name was Alison Cratchley. She dies in the early scenes of the movie. Frank tells her that she must put on the scuba gear for her protection and for her safety. But she refuses to put on the scuba gear because putting scuba gear or wearing the scuba gear from a dead person is so gross. So she refuses. And then during midway point, you see her and she's suffering from hypothermia. She's freezing, she's chattering. She can't feel her body and her limbs. And here she is, freezing. Well, no wonder you're freezing. You're not in proper scuba gear. And you refuse to put on the scuba gear because you're disgusted by the whole notion of putting on clothes that was worn on a dead person. But the worst scenario was her death scene. Now, Frank, Josh, and Carl tried to warn her about the consequences, about the dangers of going from one end of a cliff to another end of a cliff, an underwater cliff. But she refused to listen and to dismiss their warnings to her. Why? Because she didn't want to be held back from their warnings. She was independent. She didn't really take their warnings very lightly. But they warned her. They warned her about the dangers. Then her harness, as she was crossing, her hair got caught in the harness. And so then Frank, Josh, and Carl tried to save her. But the harness snapped. And she was impaled. I mean, we never got to see it, but we heard the impact. And it was pretty fucking painful to watch. Yeah. And maybe I should take sympathy for her death. But I simply can't. Because she was given the warning. She just kept making one stupid decision after another. So then, it left me without really fully sympathizing with her. It's not to say that I didn't want to, it's simply because I can't. She went out on this exhibition all on her own. She doesn't have the experience. She didn't want to wear the wetsuit, and she was warned of the dangers that would come within. I mean, sure, there have been other members of the group. I mean, they all sort of ended up perishing in the end, except for Josh. I'm not giving away any surprises because there's really no surprises. It's kind of predictable. But she was given warnings after warnings. And then I guess there was just no need for her to have been on this mission. I mean, I'm sure there probably was other jobs or other assignments for her. She didn't necessarily have to go on this exhibition. She should have did, maybe some technical stuff. Maybe she's quite better adept at doing some more background stuff. Maybe they could have used her for that. So, she's got nobody but herself to blame for her death. And as for the rest of the other cast members, I don't know them. Their character development was pretty poor. So why should I take sympathy? And normally I'm not a cold-hearted person. But these are characters that didn't care much for. And in the end, it was all null and void. So when all said and done, this movie was really, really poorly executed. The characters were bad, the editing, the cinematography. Maybe if it was directed by James Cameron, this movie probably could have been twice as better. So with that in mind, on a scale of 10, I give Sanctum a 5. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.